Alrighty. Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for attending this very important session of the Volunteer Engagement webinar series. My name is Sydney Enns. I'm the Director of Volunteer Engagement at the Tennessee Department of Disability and Aging. And I'm very, very excited. This was one of the presentations that was most requested on the survey that we did last year as we're preparing for this. So I just want to do my typical disclaimer real quick that these webinars are being recorded. So please be sure to keep information confidential when we're talking about volunteers, clients, partners in the community, things of that nature. Be sure to put yourself on mute to reduce the background noise of our speaker. I will be checking that, so I apologize. If I mute you, you may not be able to come back off mute. So try and monitor that yourself if you want to speak up toward the end, maybe have some questions. Now is also the time to turn off your camera unless you want your face recorded. Totally up to you. We do record these presentations and put them on our YouTube channel. If you have any questions throughout the presentation, please type those into the chat box and we'll address them as quickly as we can. We also encourage you all to use the reactions functions to give the presenter some feedback throughout the presentation and also stay engaged in the discussion. So everyone go ahead and take a minute to find that reaction button and tell me how you're feeling today. Let's see if we can get some thumbs up, some hearts, maybe an oh my goodness, you know, it's been a day. See what kind of reactions we get. It's also important to remember that everything we talk about on these webinars is not a requirement for you to implement in your program. These are simply best practices through research and experiences. However, if you do like what you hear and you want to implement a suggestion or strategy, be sure to have the support of your supervisor or management before moving forward. Self-care, like I mentioned before, it was a very hot topic right now and everyone is very interested in this. So we are very excited to have Lisa with us to lead us in this discussion. And thank you so much, Lisa, for being with us today. We are so looking forward to what you have to share.
Well, thank you, Sydney. Wow, what a lead up. The pressure is on. Y'all are wanting the magic, right? What is the magic formula for self-care? I hope I can help you out this afternoon. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me. Like Sydney said, my name is Lisa Reagan, and I'm the Director of Consumer Affairs and Peer Recovery Services for the Tennessee Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services. I know those government titles are so long, right? It just goes on and on. Go ahead and click to the next slide. My office, we oversee about $9 million in peer support services throughout the state. We also have a certified peer recovery specialist program, and the department helpline is also in our office, and it's answered by peer advocates. I mentioned certified peer recovery specialists, and these are individuals who have lived experience. We also call it lived expertise of mental illness and or substance use disorder. They're doing really well in their recovery. We put them through a 40-hour training, and they can get a job providing peer support services to others and, you know, just kind of role modeling hope on a daily basis. I started working for the department in 2005, and I feel so lucky to do the work that I do. I get to see peer support expand throughout our beautiful state and help people find hope every day. I'm a peer myself. I live a life of grateful wellness and recovery from PTSD. And these days I am celebrating post-traumatic growth. I don't know if you've heard that term, but it's one that keeps me going. Post-traumatic growth. All righty. So today I'm going to talk with you about burnout, what it is, the potential impact it can have, and how to reduce it, and the importance of self-care among your volunteers. I'm also going to share with you a little bit of my own journey, and that'll help you understand why self-care is just so important to me. All righty. Yes, that's the right slide. Thank you. Okay. So what is burnout really? I actually found a really good definition in Psychology Today. It said, burnout is a state of emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. And I know we're talking about your volunteers, but I want you to think about recognizing burnout in yourself as well. For those of us who work in helping professions, we have to be vigilant about self care. We've got to make sure we have good, strong boundaries and we're watching out for signs of burnout. So, some of the symptoms of burnout can include physical and emotional exhaustion, detachment and cynicism, reduced productivity and effectiveness. And I got to tell you, I think it's important to remember that we all experience some of these some of the time. When I was going through this, I really related to reduced productivity because if I have too much on my plate, too many emails, and I'll be honest, right now I have 240 in my inbox that I need to catch up on. And I'll just have a tendency to walk away. I'll just want to walk away. So what I usually do is walk away and take a break, do something to take care of myself, kind of regroup, and then I can rally and get back to it. But I feel that overwhelm, and sometimes it does result in some reduced productivity. Watching out for signs of burnout in myself, I know that I'll find myself becoming more cynical than usual. And the next thing I know, I'm sharing those cynical thoughts using my out loud voice. Oops. Right. So that's something I watch for. So, what are some common reasons why volunteers experience burnout? These are not going to surprise you. Excessive workload, long hours, lack of control and autonomy, and lack of support and recognition. And of course, we can't control all of those, but sometimes just acknowledging them, thinking about them, and understanding can really go a long way. Next slide. So, you know that experiencing burnout has physical, emotional, mental effects for your volunteers. And they might struggle like with feeling really guilty if they can't be there one day. And, I know they need reassurance that someone else is going to fill in. They might be experiencing decreased motivation, decreased satisfaction. There's also an increased risk of physical and mental health issues. But I want you to also consider how volunteer burnout affects the organization and its mission, because it does. It can result in higher turnover rates among volunteers as well as paid staff. And it can result in reduced volunteer engagement, not surprisingly. Next slide. Okay, let's move into encouraging self-care, which is crucial for maintaining our well-being. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about myself and how learning radical self-care helped me change my life, basically. All righty, Lord, y'all, look at the hair. Look at that hair. I believe that last picture was, you could probably guess, 1988, 1989, maybe. Big hair. I was very stylish. I had to pay for two perm solutions, y'all, because one was not enough to do all of my hair. I grew up in northern Indiana in a blue collar family in a blue collar town. My parents are actually from southern Kentucky originally, and they had moved north for work in the automotive factories. My parents' parents, of course, lived through the Depression. So I would say, starting with my grandparents, they modeled a parenting style, I guess you could call it, of really just being in survival mode. Parenting meant a roof over your head and food on the table. My parents did not grow up in families that were affectionate or talked about feelings. There were no hugs, no I love yous. My parents became parents themselves at age 17. So from the beginning, they were really in survival mode too, right? So that meant my brother and I grew up in a home with no hugs and no I love yous, plenty of criticism and correction, But I want you to know I don't blame my parents. I'm not mad at them. I'm not resentful. I really do understand. And a lot of what was missing for me was missing for them as well. And I also understand children need affection. They need hugs. They need support. I love yous for healthy development. And my parents had quite a bit going on in their own lives to deal with. Our home saw its share of troubles with mental illness and addiction. So I grew up feeling like I was kind of on my own, especially emotionally. I didn't experience much in the way of nurturing, but I was hyper aware of my parents' feelings and needs, particularly my mom's, and I was completely oblivious to my own feelings and needs. Okay, wait, there's a word for that. Oh, yeah, codependency. But y'all, it took me, I wasn't, it wasn't until I was in my late 20s before I finally began to learn about that kind of thing. Before that, though, I thought life was just as good as it was going to get for me. I started experiencing significant depression and anxiety as a teenager, but of course, I didn't know that's what was happening, especially the anxiety. I had no idea. I was so anxious. I thought that was just life. I ended up marrying my high school sweetheart. We moved to Nashville, me for a career in publishing, him for a career in music. And I was pretty miserable. And y'all, I was not good to my husband. We did not know how to have a healthy relationship. Neither one of us grew up in homes where healthy relationships were modeled. So we just had no idea. We ended up getting a divorce. And part of what happened when I went through the divorce was I realized that I'm gay. So that was certainly part of the problem with our marriage, right? But sometimes those super tumultuous, chaotic times in our lives can really be opportunities for magical transformation. So after the divorce, well, there was another unhealthy relationship, not surprisingly. And by that point, my life was in such chaos. I was ready to do whatever it took to have peace. And that's when I found my way to Codependence Anonymous. It's a 12-step program. I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with it. And I gotta tell you, it blew my mind. That's where I first began learning how to take care of myself, how to even identify what I was feeling, how to talk to myself in a loving way, how to stay out of other people's business. This was huge. In my family, one of the kind of warped ways of showing you love someone is to give them a lot of unsolicited advice. Do you know what I'm talking about? They're going to tell you what to do and maybe get mad at you if you don't take their unsolicited advice. So I had to unlearn some of that stuff. I learned many of those basic 12-step concepts, like take it one day at a time, take it one moment at a time if you have to. Don't should on yourself. Have you heard that one? That was a really good one for me. Live and let live. Take what you want and leave the rest. All of this just rocked my world in the best possible way. I ended up finding a good psychiatrist. I started medication, found a good therapist, found a church, and my life started taking a turn for the better. When I first began my wellness journey, I was so excited about how I changed my life. I ended up quitting my job in publishing and I went and got a master's in social work. And then I eventually found my way to the state, which surprised me, and then into the world of peer support. And I just absolutely love it. And as I started learning to take care of myself, be kind to myself, I began to attract healthier people in my life. It's really cool how it works that way. And soon I met a wonderful woman at my church named Sheila, and we have now been married 26 years. Go ahead and go to the next slide. My wife and I have two sons. They are grown now, but I can tell you that studying healthy child development in graduate school helped me learn even more about what was missing in my childhood experience and my parents and their parents. So I ended up parenting my kids very differently than I was parented myself. Our home is full of affection, lots of I love yous, lots of laughter. We actually enjoy each other's company. The life I live today includes my wonderful little family and my own commitment to growth and wellness. Here's pictures of us. There's one of us in the early years, and the other one was our recent Christmas card picture, but we were not in Hawaii. I wish we were. The family Christmas party had a Hawaiian theme, so we just went with it for a Christmas card picture. My oldest is Trenton. He lives in Murfreesboro with his girlfriend, and his career goal is to become a pilot. And the youngest is Sean. He just graduated from Nashville School of the Arts, and he's a gifted artist. They're both amazing young men. You know, at my darkest time, I got to a place where I wanted inner peace no matter what, and I was willing to do whatever it took to obtain it. And that's a daily commitment I make every day. I wake up every morning and make that same commitment again. Next slide. But what is self care really, and why should it matter to you? Self care is any healthy practice that supports you physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I want to stop a moment and say something about the phrase self-care. You know, sometimes when we hear about something too much, it's in the media too much or whatever, it can start to lose its meaning. Sometimes, comedians will start making fun of a concept or whatever, and people just start dismissing it. But I hope you hold on to the importance of self-care nonetheless. And know too that when we talk about self care, we aren't forgetting that plenty of folks have significant needs from their community. So we're not saying, oh, you just need to take a bubble bath and everything will be okay. No. Self care is a piece of what we all need to do to be well. Some of us need to reach out to our behavioral health care professionals. Some folks might need like unemployment assistance. There are a lot of needs. I just want to note that self care is not in place of crucial community supports. Okay. And as part of talking about self care and wellness, I want to talk about resilience. Learning to be a more resilient person is a big part of my personal journey. And I want you to know that resilience is developed over time. It's something you cultivate, it is attitudes and skills that can be learned and practiced. Resilience is a universal human ability to thrive in spite of setbacks. It can be intentionally taught, practiced, and developed for people across all age groups. Next slide. I have a quote for you from Dr. Nicole LaPera. Resilient people aren't born, they're made. And they're made by creating new responses to life events, which creates new neural pathways in the brain. I just love that. I think in my next life I'm going to be a neurologist. I love brain science so much. Alrighty, so y'all, over the past 4 years, we've found ample opportunity to dig for that resilience, right? We've been through a global pandemic and it's affected us in ways we might never have imagined. Next slide. There are still staff shortages, supply shortages, closed facilities. I thought you guys would like the image of the toilet paper to remember that particular supply shortage we went through. But there are still other supply shortages, right? We've all learned more about supply chain and how that works. I think it's been an interesting lesson to think about how globally dependent we are too. We've also seen some increased conflict among family, friends, neighbors, political issues going on. It's been hard. And we're working, serving, advocating within systems that can be very challenging. And our systems are not necessarily set up to support our self care, right? Am I right? services to individuals and families. So they hear the stories, they hear each person's story, and sometimes those situations are so complicated and heartbreaking. And sometimes there's only so much we can do to help, right? We can't always fix their problem. And we know how hard that can be. I know I know there are times when some of your volunteers might experience those heartbreaking, difficult stories as almost like a personal defeat because they weren't able to help. And we're hearing that we need to prioritize self-care, but sometimes we can barely get through the day with everything we're trying to do. It is not a level playing field, and I think it's important to acknowledge that. And the system is further complicated by issues like we mentioned, workforce shortages. The workers who are there are tired, they're tired, you're tired. It's a lot. Next slide. When our own energy is depleted, we can become like a sponge, just kind of absorbing the emotions of others. Everything can seem sort of amplified, a little worse than it was yesterday. And that can begin to push us toward burnout, maybe even becoming cynical, negative, avoidant. When our own energy is depleted, we have to be tender with ourselves and love ourselves a little bit more, whatever that looks like for you. Next slide. Empathy without boundaries can lead to self abandonment, and constant self abandonment leads to burnout. Please be careful with when and how you give your energy. I thought that was a really lovely quote. I wanted to be sure and share that with you. I'm one of those people who needs quiet time to recharge. That's how I get my energy. But I still experience symptoms of depression and anxiety from time to time. For some reason, for me, it's often connected to my physical well being. Like I can just get a bad cold or something, and dark thoughts will start visiting me again. But now I recognize them and I don't buy into it. I do what I need to do. I read my affirmations, distract myself with Netflix. I like to watch comedians on TikTok, just whatever it takes. I gotta tell you though, my oldest is absolutely horrified that I'm on TikTok. I don't know what he thinks I'm watching, but I'm looking at like watercolor tutorials and baby animals and comedians. It's funny. We can indeed increase our ability to be resilient. We can be intentional about connecting with each other. We can remember our sense of purpose, practice being flexible, and remember to focus on hope. You know, in thinking about those times when your volunteers are working with someone in a heartbreaking situation, I think this is where increasing healthy boundaries combined with prioritizing self care can really help us respond in a healthier way to those difficult situations. Next slide. All right, support systems. This is a really important idea among those of us in recovery from mental health and or substance use disorder. Many of us have been isolated, too independent, unable to ask for help. So part of our commitment to wellness, we learn to develop a healthy support system. So these are people in your life, ideally many parts of your life, you interact with, talk to, can ask for help from, have fun with. I have my sweet family, my church, my neighbors, my friends. I can think of very specific people I can turn to. It's actually something we ask about on the application for certified peer recovery specialists. We ask them to tell us about their support system because that can tell us a lot about where they are in their recovery journey. We can also seek out peer support. This can look like finding a group of people you can connect with who've had similar experiences, similar feelings, and support one another. I recently joined a book club with my church, and it's been a very supportive community. Knowing you are not alone can make all the difference. Next slide. I'm really into quotes, if you couldn't tell. Here's another good one. It's not just okay to pay attention to your own needs, it's essential. An undernourished heart and soul has so much less to offer to the rest of the world than hearts and souls that are filled. So please take care of yourself. The rest of the world needs you fully charged. Paul Boynton. Next slide. We all have to figure out what works for us to reduce stress in our lives. I like to get outside and go for a big walk as often as I can. It's been really hot lately, y'all. Research has shown that exercise is truly effective at reducing stress. We know this. I also do yoga, meditation, journaling. When I journal, I often start with kind of a stream of consciousness, and then I'll move into focusing on gratitude, just start listing things I'm grateful for. Um, we can also make a real commitment to taking care of our bodies. That's a big one with me. Yesterday, we had a big event for work with our 45 peer support centers across the state. Everything went great. But after it was over, I went for an acupuncture appointment. Anyone else do acupuncture? I love it. It helps me relax and reset. We can also, thinking about taking care of our bodies, we can do some deep breathing. Okay, let's practice. When we do this, you're going to breathe in through your nose like you're smelling a flower, and then breathe out through your mouth like you're blowing out a candle. Ready? Breathe in and breathe out. Nice. Just taking 10 deep breaths can absolutely do wonders for your mind and body. Think about your nutrition and how it affects you. I have to limit caffeine or I can get shaky and irritable, snippy with my family. I know you're shocked that I could ever be snippy with my family. Y'all, I love coffee. I love it. I wish I could drink it all day long, but no, I can only drink it in the morning. Apparently, I'm one of those sensitive souls that has to limit caffeine intake. But we need to exercise our bodies, prioritize healthy sleep. Sleep is so important. That's what the little kitty cat's representing there, healthy sleep. And not surprisingly, alcohol and drugs are not recommended ways to cope with stress. They can actually make things much worse in the long run. We need to relax. If you or your volunteers find you usually have a packed schedule, that would be me, raise your hand. Make a commitment to schedule in activities that help you relax, have some fun. And finally, we've got to be very deliberate about connecting with others. I think the ways that we connect with others really changed during the pandemic, not always happening as naturally as it used to. Many of us now work from home and we experience more of our life on Zoom or Teams, both professionally and personally. People are doing support groups online, that kind of thing. So we've got to make connecting happen and be more deliberate about it. Okay, I would love for you all to throw in the chat. Here, let me open up the chat for me. Some of your ideas of what you do to take care of yourself. I am not always good about, oh, there we go. Now I see it. But I would love to, can we see the chat? Yes. Okay, good. So do share your ideas of what you do to take care of yourself. And a lot of what we're talking about here is about putting yourself first. Oh, here we go. Building Legos. Excellent. Gardening. I play softball. Oh man, you guys have got great ideas. Somebody one time said they really like to do arts and crafts. And I have a different hobby in that regard. I like to go to Michael's and purchase things for arts and crafts. That's fun and relaxing. I don't always do them, but I'll purchase them. scrapbooking, jigsaw puzzles. Oh man, you all are rocking it. You are rocking it. I love it. Sometimes we need to write these down. And what I find is if I'm super, super stressed, it's like my brain stops working right and I can't even think of the things I love to do. So it can be really helpful to just write them down for those times when you just need to pick something, right? And do it to take care of yourself. Let's jump to the next slide. You can keep sharing. Those are wonderful. Remember that putting yourself first is not selfish. You need to put yourself first to some extent in order to be of use to anyone else. Y'all, I'm going to read that again. It's an important one. Remember that putting yourself first is not selfish. You need to put yourself first to some extent in order to be of use to anyone else. Next slide. And some of us benefit from talking with a professional therapist or maybe even checking things out with your PCP or a psychiatrist to see if medication might help. Therapy and medication, like I said, have both been part of my own personal wellness plan through the years, and I'm really thankful to have had those tools. Okay, and this is really cool. You can go to Mental Health America's website and take a screening right there online. They're confidential. They have several confidential screenings on different topics like depression, anxiety, substance abuse, and that can give somebody a better idea of whether or not they might need to seek professional help. So that's a really cool resource. Next slide. Okay, let's talk a little bit about organizational support. Your volunteers serve a crucial role, as you know, and I know you really appreciate the time and energy they give and how deeply they care. So healthy volunteers who prioritize their own well-being are able to make a long-term commitment, and that benefits everyone. So anything you can do to create a supportive environment really helps. Think about whether or not their employees prioritize their own wellness. It's important also that they have really clear expectations for what they do, and there's a limit on their time and availability. I keep thinking too, as I go through this, that that's true for all of us. So a lot of it is that the healthy things that are true for all of us are also true for your volunteers. This can help set them up for healthy boundaries so that they take time for themselves and their families, ideally reducing stress and preventing burnout. Effective time management is another key aspect of promoting work-life balance, volunteer life balance. So check in with your volunteers and maybe ask them about time management. It might be an area where you can help. And prioritization is another one where sometimes managers can help clarify priorities. By prioritizing tasks, volunteers can reduce stress and maintain that healthy balance. I have one staff member in particular where sometimes if I assign her a new task, she feels a little overwhelmed. And we kind of have to talk it through so that she can get a picture of how long it's likely to take. Like we'll break it down by day. She's almost always imagining that it'll take way longer than it really is. And we go over priorities and expectations as well as the time management of the new task. And all of that really helps her manage her anxiety and kind of that initial emotional reaction. Another thing to consider is if there might be any trainings that you can provide to your volunteers on self-care and burnout prevention, because that could be really helpful, of course. Next slide. Look at this. It's a fox, a fennec fox. And I want you to celebrate his little ears and that he is listening. You want to really encourage open communication with your volunteers. Give them opportunities to express their thoughts, concerns, ideas freely. These are the kinds of things that, everybody gets busy in their day-to-day work and we don't always carve out time for that kind of thing. Create opportunities for check-ins and feedback loops. I just read a great book by Marcus Buckingham called Love and Work. I just loved it. And one of the things he really emphasized was the importance of having regular check ins. Like face to face is great. They could even be like 15 minutes, but even email or text can be helpful. Just keeping that connection, making sure people feel supported. We all want to feel understood and supported by our peers and our leaders, and that goes for volunteers too, of course. Empathy is really important. Empathy can be encouraged by team building activities, listening sessions, and promoting a culture of understanding and compassion. I love the idea of listening sessions. I think that's something that could be really helpful to incorporate at all levels of our organizations, right? With the people who are that I supervise, as well as the people who supervise me. And volunteers may need access to counseling services, wellness workshops, resources for stress management, that kind of thing. Next slide. I am hoping that I've given you a lot to think about, and I have a challenge for you. This is where the chat's going to come in again. What is one small change you can make to help your volunteers prevent burnout and prioritize their own well being? So, if anyone knows right off the bat what that one small change might be, feel free to share it in the chat. I don't know, can we unmute and share and raise hands and that kind of thing, Sydney?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone can unmute themselves, or if you want to raise hands, we can definitely do that and call on people. The first thing that kind of jumped in my mind is being more aware of overcommitments from volunteers because they're so eager and so excited to help, and we're so excited to have the help. But we also need to be like, it's great that you want to do these one or two things, but maybe not all five, and
Sure.
try to prevent it on that end.
Yeah, that's a great idea. What else, y'all? One small change you can make.
Go
Oh,
ahead, Shelley.
Shelley, go ahead, Shelley.
I we have an open door policy at our office, so we encourage volunteers to come in. We see most of them, and they come in and chat and whatever. But we don't actually say we want you to come in, or we just assume that they know that we're there and can talk to us. But I think in a newsletter that we publish every month, I think I'll make an intentional, we're here for you. Please, if you have any concerns, any questions, if we can support you in any way, be sure and stop. Because it's maybe the ones who are getting burnt out who actually aren't stopping. It's the ones who love to talk that are stopping, but maybe not those that need it. So maybe to actually specifically say.
That's awesome. I love that. I love how specific that is too. That's always the goal. That's something Marcus Buckingham talks about in his book, to really hone in on those very specific things that can help. I'm someone who tends to lean towards shyness. So I would really need to be encouraged to come in and talk, and maybe not even if there's a problem or anything, but just to come in and connect, because like I said, that connection is so important and could help me feel valued and supported. Absolutely. I think we're getting some here in the chat too. Melissa said cards of praise and encouragement. Oh, that's fabulous. Carol said check-ins. Make sure you're doing the check-ins. Wendy said, oh, one more in-person lunch and chat, and you can discuss anything that's on their minds while you fellowship. That's awesome. Marilyn said quarterly appreciation cards that express how much they mean to us. I'm sure that's powerful. You want to also think about anything that could be kind of a two-way where they have the opportunity to share what's on their mind. And sometimes they have concerns or they see issues with the systems, and you might be able to explain a bigger picture or why it's like that. So it's important to hear from them as well. Walking meetings, Almetria, I hope I said that right, helps break down barriers. Nice. Carol said, if I don't see someone for a while, I'll call them. Oh, that's beautiful. I would really appreciate that. If someone, if I used to volunteer regularly and you hadn't seen me a while, check on me. Yeah, absolutely. Presenter boot camp reunion. Sydney, I have not been through presenter boot camp, so I was a little concerned starting this. I thought I'm missing out on something. What other ideas do y'all have? One small change you can make. These are fabulous. I hope I didn't miss any hands or chats. Sometimes it's hard to catch everything. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I would love to hear more from you. Any questions you might have, of course, but also, was there anything that really resonated with you? It doesn't have to be a full-on epiphany, but maybe just something that resonated with you, or want to open it up for questions?
Something that really resonated with me, and of course I hear it all the time, and for whatever reason you saying it just made it click, is that it's really a daily self-care. It's not just I'm going on vacation next week, I have my little refresher, I'm going to come back and it's going to be better than ever, because that was my mindset before. And of course I'm going on vacation next week, so I was like, yes, this is perfect time to listen to what Lisa has to say. So now I need to be more conscious and aware that, yes, that little break is great, but then I come back and, there's been a week of me not checking emails, and then I get stressed, and then I'm like right back into the routine of things. And I need to be more conscious of how not to get back in that same routine that's always been.
Yeah, that you can make that choice. I'm glad I mentioned don't shit on yourself. Remember that from before? Because that's so easy to do, even in thinking about self-care. Oh man, I should do this, this, and this. So that's not going to be healthy. Maybe that's just me in my mind. I tend to think of it that way. So it's an option. These are choices you can make. That's always helped me kind of relax and be kinder to myself about it. Remove the
I think it's
word
also a
should.
matter of,
Go ahead.
no, I was about to say, I think it's also a matter of extending the same grace that you give to other people, because oftentimes a lot of the things in which we seek in ourselves are the most in which we give to other people. I know as far as with me, I'm an internalizer, as well as I suffer in silence, instead of asking for help, or again, giving myself the grace that I give to other people, or even seeking like self-care. And so it's like you really have to, realize that you're worthy of it, that you have to set, like you said, intentions every single day to keep yourself rooted and grounded, so that you don't get to the point of the extreme where you are burnt out. It's like, how can you stop in the middle of, the tracks, as far as, creating this collateral damage, as opposed to realizing it's like, okay, I need to take a break. I think as a society, we're so used to being in go mode that we don't know, or being productive, we don't know how to just sit and breathe and be still, and that's okay. because we have a fear of, being called lazy, or, it's like you should be doing something, when sitting and breathing and being, in stillness and practicing mindfulness is actually doing something. And you're no good to other people if you don't sit there and pour back into you. So I always, tell other people, it's like pour yourself the first cup of coffee in the morning and get people from your overflow, because like I said, you're no good empty to yourself or no one else. So never give the best of you to someone else first before you give it to yourself.
Wow. Sydney, I
That's,
think you found your next presenter.
that
That
was
was
awesome.
amazing. Thank
Mm.
you.
I I actually, during when you were talking, I sent this to my daughter because we were just having a conversation about being an empathetic person. And so your quote, empathy without boundaries can lead to self-abandonment, and constant self-abandonment leads to burnout. Be careful with when and how you give your energy. Totally spot on. And how many of us just give, 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 and forget about ourselves until there's nothing left to give. It's
And
just so real and so powerful, that quote is.
thank you for sharing. Yes. I think we're getting a lot of comments in the chat too. Compassion fatigue is real. Absolutely. Society gives us all sorts of kudos to being busy, but the true work doesn't always happen in the busy world. Well said, Shelley. Thank you. Marilyn said, I am the world's worst at putting myself first. I just give all I have to everyone else until I crash and no help to anyone. Or you used to. That, that's something I'll say to myself too. I'll word it in the past just to be encouraging to myself. What else resonated with you? You can unmute or raise your hand, whichever.
Just as far as with your story, first of all, thank you for your transparency and vulnerability. And I'm just so happy that it was a happy ending to it, but just also being authentically you, being unapologetically you, because even though you have gone through so many circumstances to come to where you are now, as far as your life, your family, your children, what you're doing now, it's just a matter of not being afraid. And it's actually okay. Because, like you said, you found yourself through it, because sometimes you have to go through the process in order to get to the promise. And so, here you are as far as the promise of your life. And, I just felt, so connected to you in doing so, where even though, like I said, you had to overcome so much, there's still a happy ending to it.
Well, thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it. I love doing these presentations.
Kind of piggybacking on what Almitria was saying, and I agree 1,000%. Thank you so much for being so open and honest with your story. And it kind of made me realize that I don't really look at my story as often as maybe I should, for reasons why I might have a reaction to something that a lot of people are like, why is she so touchy about that? Like, for example, my parents were coaches. So, if you were early, you were on time. You're on time, you're late, don't even bother showing up. So people who aren't punctual, for me, I'm just like, this is so disrespectful. But it does actually root back to my childhood, and it has nothing to do with the individual person. They had another meeting, it ran long, no fault of their own. Like, I need to just chill, take a few 10 breaths, and just relax.
Well said, Sydney. How many times have we had to cancel a meeting, or we were running late for a meeting or an appointment or something, and then when we connect, the other person says, oh, that worked out so well for me. I needed to do this, this, and this anyway, right? How often does that happen? So I agree, being kind to ourselves and others and giving grace to ourselves and others. Absolutely. Amitria pointed out adverse childhood experiences, the ACEs study, and how much we can learn from that in terms of moving forward. Anything else? This has been fabulous, y'all. I have enjoyed talking with you.
Other thing that really resonated with me, and I wrote it down, that Codependency Anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know that was a thing.
It's a
And
thing, yeah.
Me too.
that's really intriguing to me. Then I might have to look into that and see,
It
because
was something. Go ahead.
it sounds like it. I don't know, when you hear codependency, it just makes me think of, I'm relying on a partner and, but it sounds like the Codependency Anonymous is more focused on yourself than the relationship with. Oh,
Can you hear me?
yeah, sorry. Somehow I think we all just got muted.
Yeah, Codependency Anonymous really absolutely focuses on yourself and helps you learn how to have healthy relationships. And it is 12 steps. So it's very much in that vein, similar to other 12-step programs. And it was just transformative for me. It was something I did like really intensely for maybe about a year. And then I kind of moved into more spirituality and spiritual seeking, but I never lost those basic foundational concepts that I learned there. They just really helped me so much. One of the nice things about that now is like I have lived experience of mental illness, PTSD, but I am over the certified peer recovery specialist, and they can have mental illness or substance use disorder or both, of course. So having had my own 12-step experience is kind of cool. I can relate even better to those who chose that path for their recovery from substance use disorder. We can go to the next slide. I have my contact information. If anyone wants to reach out to me, and like Sydney said, she's going to share these slides, but I love to hear from people. If you want to connect and ask any questions or anything, I'd be happy to help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again, Lisa, for your time, your story, just all the amazing resources that you've provided and allowing us to be open with each other in this forum. It's been wonderful. I have a couple updates to share, so I'm going to see if I can switch my screen real quick. We'll stay on. And of course, if you have any questions for Lisa, please type those into the chat and we'll get to those. Now, where did what I want to share? Here we go. Is Adam Dixon on with us? I didn't see the name, but there's a couple like incognito names. If Adam is on, let me know. Okay, not a problem. Kim, you have your hand up. What's up? We'll turn it over to you. Oh, Kim, can you unmute yourself? Oh, she didn't mean to. Okay, there you go. Got to look at the chat as well. Real quick, just a couple updates I wanted to share with you all. It's not going to take a long time, I promise, so hang in with me. Real quick update on the webinar sessions. Clearly today we had a little bit of technical issues. Thank you so much for having that quick turnaround for me and giving me the grace that I did not give myself for that technical issue. But we will have a new online registration for the last two sessions. So I'll be working on that today and tomorrow. And when we get the follow-up email with all of Lisa's wonderful information, I'll be sure to have the correct link to register for the next session of the series. So unfortunately, if you have registered previously, you will have to re-register. I apologize for that. Or if you don't want to register, shoot me an email and say, hey, Sydney, register me, and I'm happy to do that for you. I will also be updating the flyer. So that will be in the follow-up email as well. With the changing to the new department, our emails got shut off and they've been reactivated under new accounts. So I'm kind of catching up with redoing things. So I appreciate your patience with that. Today, we had our first meeting of our CVA study group. So for those of you who may be new, CVA is the Certified Volunteer Administrator Credential Certification. It's internationally recognized through the Council for Certification in Volunteer Engagement, or administration, excuse me, CCVA. So we polled some people. We kind of spread it out there to the listserv that we're having the study group if anyone is interested. The group, again, we started meeting today. We're going through September 26th, and we meet every 2 weeks. So every other week on Thursdays at 1 o'clock Central, 2 o'clock Eastern. If you're interested in taking your CVA. In order to join the study group, you do not have to sit for the exam, but that's what we do in the group is we study for it. So even if you just want to kind of learn what it's about and kind of get a feel for it, so maybe you don't want to test in October, maybe you want to test in 2025, we would love to have you join us. If you're interested in getting certified, you have to have at least 3 years of experience, paid or volunteer, 30% of your job dedicated to volunteer resource management. Got to have your current resume, a letter of recommendation. I know many of you, happy to do those letters if you need one. The next window is going to be October 1st to the 14th. You do have to apply by September 1st. So keeping that in the back of your mind. And the certification is $400. So talk with your organization, see if there's some maybe continuing education funds that you have. I know we have quite a few CVAs from across the country on the webinar with us today. Feel free to type in the chat box how amazing the CVA is. We would love to have you all, even if every other Thursday you just want to come hang out and talk about volunteers. We have a really, really good time. Jared and Rebecca, who are on the call with us, help facilitate it. Kita does as well whenever she is available. So we have a really great group of people who've have their CVA, can share our experiences and really help you build that confidence to get certified if that's something that you're interested in. And then the last thing is just a reminder that our next webinar is Thursday, August 15th. I'll have the correct link and hopefully no technical issues next time. We're going to be talking about bridging hearts and minds, fostering equity, diversity, inclusion, and sense of belonging in senior and disability support. And this is Natalie Antoinette Johnson, founder of Passion for Dreams, and the LJ Legacy Impact Foundation will be talking with us about that. And there's my contact information if anyone has any questions for me. Thank you all so much again for joining us. Lisa, thank you again for everything that you shared with us today. It was wonderful. I know I am inspired. I have many ideas, and I need to just, before I share ideas, make sure I have the time to make those ideas a reality and not burn myself out.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed it.
I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. So if anyone has any questions that don't want to be recorded, we can stay on for a couple more minutes, but I hope you all have a great weekend and we will talk next month.
Thanks, Cindy and Lisa. This was great.